Hey everybody, this is Eric. We are in my magic fortress of solitude here, aka on my bed. This is where the magic happens. Literally, ha ha, magic cards. So I'm going to be going over this new deck that I made for Game Shampoo and covering the cards that are in it, because it has been surprisingly potent so far, and almost every card in here is out of the M13 set, so this is going to be a video kind of aimed at players looking for either new to the game and looking for some ideas for some decks, because there is so much involved in a game of Magic that it can become kind of overwhelming for new players, or just a video for those interested in seeing some kind of fun combinations for M13's cards, because a lot of the core sets do kind of get a lot of repeats from older sets, and M13 certainly has its fair share of those, as you'll see here, but there's also a pretty good number of unique cards to the set that I feel like really add something. And so as you can clearly see, I've got a mountain and island themed deck here, which I had a lot of fun building, and I've never done this color combinations before, actually. Some friends and I were drafting. We draft every weekend in San Francisco, and I ended up pulling a lot of blues and reds, and I came home and smashed them together. Turns out it works pretty well. So let's just go over what's in the deck, and I don't know, we'll see why it works as well as it does. This is a really interesting deck for me because there are not a ton of really heavy hitters in it, and usually when I play Magic, I'm just kind of biding my time with small, annoying creatures and instants and sorceries, and then either building those smaller things up with counters, or multiplying them with tokens, or, you know, otherwise just biding my time until I can throw out kind of a trump card that basically just ends the game. And this deck does not do that. This deck is, I found it to be very consistent in that I know what I'm going to expect with it usually, and it's kind of surprising me, because it's really been, like I said, mopping up a lot of the people I've been playing against. So I figured I would show what's in it. So, anyways, let's get down into it. As you can see, I've split the cards up into lands, sorceries, instants, creatures, enchantments, artifacts, and the one planeswalker. Ooh, let's get that. The one planeswalker is in it, Chandra. So we're over here. Let's start with that. We've got Chandra the Firebrand, and this is actually the M12 version of the card, but she's in 13 as well. Same effects and same everything. So let's take a look at her effects here. +1 loyalty counter. She deals 1 damage to target creature or player. -2 loyalty counters. When you cast your next instant or sorcery spell this turn, copy that spell, and you may choose a new target or new targets for the copy. And that's the important one. That's the big one that is going to really be contributing to this deck. And then -6. Chandra the Firebrand deals 6 damage to each of up to 6 target creatures and or players. Obviously, that is super helpful, but like I said, the reason that she's in here is that middle one. Allows you to copy instants or sorceries, because as you'll see when we get down to that section, there are some pretty good instants and sorceries, and there are creatures in this deck who really add to that aspect of the deck. So we've only got 2 artifacts in the whole deck. They're both equipments, they're both rings. And like I said before, there are a lot of kind of reprints, or if not reprints, then cards in M13 that are basically the same as older cards. Like the Gilded Lotus, for example, is the same as the infamous Black Lotus, which runs for thousands of dollars. And these are also not reprints, I don't believe, but they have the same effects as a series of infamous old Magic cards that run for a lot of money on eBay and that kind of thing. So basically what they do is you equip them to a creature, and you see the Ring of Evos Isle gives a creature hexproof until the end of turn if you tap 2. And at the beginning of your upkeep, put a 1/1 counter on equipped creature if it's blue. The Ring of Vulcus, equipped creature has haste. At the beginning of your upkeep, put a 1/1 counter on equipped creature if it's red. So that's just basic, common sense here. It's a blue-red deck. You want to be able to power up your guys. These are really good cards to do that with because at the beginning of your upkeep, every time, they get a 1/1 counter. Alright, enchantment time. Creatures you control have haste. This is a good card to have in here because what I've found is that a lot of times I'm putting out creatures, a lot of times I'm putting out instants that will end up with me spawning lots of tokens. So it's good to, if you're spawning a crap ton of tokens this turn, they can all attack, tap, whatever, this turn. Then we've got Spirit Away. This is one of those rare cards that is not from M13 that is in the deck. It is from Avacyn, and it costs 7 mana. Enchant a creature, you control enchanted creature. It has 2/2 and flying. So that's just a nice way because, like I said earlier, there's a bit of a lack of really big power cards in this deck. It's a nice way to take someone else's, make it yours, make it stronger, and give it flying. So that'll really annoy some people. Now we've got the big old stack of creatures, and this is what I was talking about right here. Talrand Sky Summoner, excuse me for the mispronunciation. He only costs 4, he's a 2/2, but whenever you cast an instant or sorcery, you put out a 2/2 Drake creature with flying. So right away you can see why it would be helpful to be able to copy instants with Chandra. You can double up on your token production. Then we've got this Mindclaw Shaman in here. He is one of the most expensive cards in the deck. He's only 2/2, but when he enters the battlefield, target opponent reveals his or her hand. You may cast an instant or sorcery from that player's hand without paying its mana cost again. Getting out tokens. We've got Master of the Pearl Trident in here. He's a merfolk as well. Only costs 2 to put out. He's a 2/2. Other merfolk creatures you control have 1/1 and island walk, meaning they're unblockable as long as defending player controls an island. So anyway, we've got another Talrand in here. Same effect, same everything. So basically, what I found is that I only have 2 of these guys. I did kind of draft this deck from a booster box that I won. So I was limited to what was in the booster box, but basically the more of these guys you have out at a time, the more of a bitch you are to play against, because every time you cast an instant or a sorcery, for each of these guys you have out on the battlefield, you're putting out a 2/2 creature with flying. And so I only have the 2 because I only got the 2 in the booster box. But, I mean, if you want to throw in more, I mean, it's not a super expensive card. And he is super annoying. Like, pretty consistently when I win, it's because I have 2 of those guys out and I'm just doubling up on tokens every turn. And we've got a clone card in here. This guy is from M13, but again, he's been around. You may have clone enter the battlefield as a copy of any creature on the battlefield. So what you can do, if like me you're limited to having only 2 of these guys, you can have clone enter the battlefield as an exact copy of the Sky Summoner. And then boom, you've got 3. You're putting out 3 2/2s every time you cast an instant. Or You can copy one of your enemy's cards if it's super powerful, or you can copy one of the other very powerful creatures in this deck, such as Stormtide Leviathan. This is the most expensive blue card in the deck. This is kind of the trump card, if you will, of the deck, where when I found myself kind of getting into those late game stalemates, nobody's really moving one way or the other, throw this guy out, 8/8 with Island Walk. All lands or islands, in addition to their other types, creatures without flying or Island Walk can't attack. Because a lot of creatures in this deck have flying, and a lot of the ones that don't have Island Walk, you're basically good to go. And because all of the opponent's lands will become islands in addition to their other types, you can just swing with this guy and other creatures such as Mr. Master of the Pearl Trident, who has Island Walk as well, and your enemies just can't do anything to block it. We've got another Master of the Pearl Trident in here as well. Just helpful to have these guys in here because, for everyone that's out there, your merfolks get more powerful. You don't want people killing your Sky Summoners. That is a big deal in this deck. So we've got Jace's Phantasm here. He's one of our one-shots. I like to have creatures in every deck, like a good amount of creatures that only cost 1 to play. That way, in the first turn, you can compete. You can throw something out there and, be a step ahead of your opponent. The thing is, a lot of those one-shot creatures are pretty weak. Jace's Phantasm is an interesting and a fun card because it's a 1/1 with flying, but he gets 4/4 as long as an opponent has 10 or more cards in the graveyard. So you can throw it out there, have a flying 1/1 out there first turn if you draw him, which is nice. But if you keep him out there long enough, he becomes that much stronger. Next card, another interesting one, Slumbering Dragon. Again, one shot. It's a 3/3 with flying. But the thing is, he cannot attack or block unless he has 5 or more counters on him. But whenever a creature attacks you or a planeswalker, Chandra, you control, put a 1/1 counter on Slumbering Dragon. So basically the opponent swings at you 5 times and you've got an 8/8 flying for 1 mana. It's a good card. It can be a little annoying if you draw him in the beginning of the game, simply because you've got him out there and he's strong, but he can't block or attack. But once you build him up, he's super useful and very strong. And we've got a Fog Bank here. I love this card. This is one of my favorite cards in M13, actually, because it can stop anything, any attack, basically. It only costs 2 mana to play. It has Defender and Flying, and it's a 0/2, but you prevent all combat damage that would be dealt to and dealt by Fog Bank. So you can block. I've been in situations where I was blocking like 200 with this guy, and just he won't die. Super useful. We've got the Firewing Phoenix in here. It's flying, 4/2. It's great, and since it only costs 4, it's not a huge mana investment. It's great for if you're playing a deck that doesn't have a lot of flying or reach stuff. You can just soar right over it and deal 4 damage right away. And if it happens to die, tap 4 mana and return it from your graveyard to your hand. So, if you're in a pinch, just throw this guy out there. He's really good. Got another Phantasm. Oh, this guy. I like this guy a lot. This is the big, sort of, like I said before, trump card for the red cards. Kind of the equivalent to the Stormtide Leviathan. And he only costs 5 to play. This guy is awesome. He's a 5/5 with flying and haste. So he can attack as soon as he hits the battlefield. But when he enters the battlefield, it deals 1 damage to each creature with flying your opponent's control, and then you tap those creatures. That is just awesome. Like, super good for this deck, because almost everything in this deck has flying. And so, in the event that you're playing someone who also has a lot of flying stuff, it can be really annoying because that's kind of a big deal for this deck, being able to soar over everybody's stuff and deal damage to them. If you can destroy or tap an opponent's cards with flying, plus he has haste, I mean, you're pretty much good to go. Next, we've got another Avacyn card in here, Archwing Dragon. This guy costs 4, he has flying, he also has haste, he's a 4/4, and at the beginning of your end step, you return him to your hand, which, to a new Magic player, that might sound counterintuitive, but in fact, it's the biggest selling point of this card by far. Basically, what that means is that as long as nobody blocks and straight up kills it, this creature won't die. You don't really have to worry about instants and sorceries quite so much, because you throw it out, you go into your attack phase, you attack, then you go into your end step when you're ready and return it to your hand. So when it's your opponent's turn, you can't really do anything about it. It's a very elusive card. And so that makes it a lot of fun. We've got another Slumbering Dragon, another Fog Bank, and then the last creature in here, a Void Stalker. This guy is fun, I like him. I like him in the context of this deck, just because blue is a very tricky color. But he doesn't have flying. He doesn't spew out tokens or anything like that, so he's not integral necessarily to the core themes of this deck. But I did need another, or I wanted another low-cost creature, and this guy is pretty good. He's pretty fun. He's a 2/1, tap 3 mana, and Void Stalker. Zoomed in a little too much there. Put Void Stalker and target creature on top of their owner's libraries, and then those players shuffle their libraries. So basically, he's really good if your opponent just throws out like a huge creature and you can't think of a way to stop it. Just force your opponent to shuffle it back into his library. So that's it for the creatures over there. Now let's move on to the instants. We've got Chandra's Fury in here. And remember, every time with the Sky Summoners, at least, which I pretty consistently get at least one of them, because this is a 60 card deck, so it's not too difficult to get what you want. The odds are usually in your favor for drawing pretty decent stuff. But remember, every time you throw out an instant or a sorcery, you're throwing out at least one 2/2 flying Drake creature, depending on how many of those Sky Summoners you've got out there. So we've got Chandra's Fury, one of the few common cards in this deck. She costs 5 to throw out, deals 4 damage to a target player, and 1 damage to each creature that player controls. So, pretty much your typical burn deck kind of strategy, except accelerated. You're dealing damage to the opponent and 1 damage to every creature that opponent controls, which can potentially put a real dent in their defenses. On summon, pretty standard thing right there. Return target creature to its owner's hand. Basically, it's a one-shot. You're basically just trying to keep the opponent from throwing out really powerful cards while you build up an army of tokens or throw out something super strong like the Stormtide Leviathan or the Thundermaw Healthhape. Here we've got Volcanic Geyser. Costs at least 3 to play. 2 and then an X. Volcanic Geyser deals X damage to target creature or player. That's simple. Simple but effective. Another Chandra's Fury, and that's it for the instants. And sorceries, got many more of those. Again, this card is not from 2013. This is Mystic Retrieval. Return target instant or sorcery card from your graveyard to your hand, and it has a flashback, so you can cast it from your graveyard. Basically, you can cast it for a second time, and since this is a blue-red deck, works out very nicely. Again, that's just great for pumping out tokens. And as you'll see with some of the other sorceries here, it's also great for stealing your enemy's stuff. Got Flames of the Firebrand here. I like this card a lot. It's very flexible. It deals 3 damage, divided as you choose among 1, 2, or 3 target creatures and or players. So worst case scenario, you're just dumping 3 damage onto an enemy, but you can also take out 3 of their 1/1s, or take out a, I don't know, like a 3/3, something like that. Flexible card. That's always nice. Switcheroo here is one of my favorites. Exchange control of 2 target creatures. So let's say enemy's got a really strong card out. You can switch one of your weaker cards with his really strong card, kind of turn the tide of battle, and as you do so, if you have this guy summoner out, again, throw out tokens while you do it. Sleep, another one of my favorite cards in this set. Tap all creatures target player controls. They don't untap during the player's next untap step. That's just mean. Even more mean is that there are multiple copies of Sleep in this deck. I have a ton of those cards, but I decided, in the name of keeping this deck lean and varied, I would only stick 2 in. I wanted room for stuff like Cleaver Riot. Creatures you control gain double strike until the end of turn. It's a fun sorcery to put out. As usual, you can throw out some tokens with it. But more than that, it's helpful if you're using something like the Thundermaw Hellkite that has haste and taps all the other cards. Because then, in that hypothetical situation, you could launch a huge attack against your enemies because all their flying stuff would be tapped or dead. Switcheroo again. Talrands, I'll never pronounce that properly. Invocation. Put 2/2/2 Drake creature tokens with flying onto the battlefield. Simple but effective. And even more fun is if you have 2 Talrands out there, you're really putting 4 2/2 Drakes out there. Mark of Mutiny. This card is awesome. Gain control of target creature until end of turn. Put a 1/1 counter on it, untap it, and it gains haste until the end of turn. So basically, for 1 turn, you're turning the enemy's cards against them. Got another Invocation and another Mark of Mutiny. The sorceries in there are really fun. And then all that's left over after that are the lands. Let's zoom out a little bit here. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. 11 islands. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Mountains for a total of 21 regular land cards. Got a Reliquary Tower. Basically, you have no maximum hand size. Tap it to add 1 to your mana pool. It's not like super necessary. I like this card just because I like working with a big hand. So this is more of a personal entry in here for me, but this would be better served in a deck that had something like Venser's Journal in it. I believe it is, that says that you gain 1 life for every card in your hand at the beginning of your upkeep. But like I said, I just like working with a large hand, so that's why I put that in there. And I've got 2 Hellion Crucibles. These are fun because they do function as regular lands. They add a generic mana to your pool. But you see here, if you tap 2 and the Hellion Crucible, you can put a pressure counter on it. When you have 2, you can remove them, sacrifice the land, and put a 4/4 red Hellion creature with haste onto the battlefield. So again, it's just a nice way to build up tokens if things aren't really looking up for you. At least you have some lands that can pump out tokens. So now I've got this massive magic cards on my bed, but that's the deck, and it's obviously mostly themed around pumping out tokens while taking or destroying your enemy's shit. And like I said, it works works out pretty well. Gotten some people pretty annoyed with that deck. So hope you enjoyed watching the video, and be sure to stay tuned for more.